Hello, everybody. So I thought I'd do a video now all about the worst writing advice I've ever been given. And the worst writing advice I've ever been given is show, don't tell. It is crap advice. It's hackneyed. It's junk. It's a stereotype. It's wrong on all sorts of levels, or just on it's wrong on every level that's important, I think. And as advice, it lacks any kind of functionality or instrumentality, and it like will lead you down blind alleys and dark rabbit holes that you don't need to go down as a writer, because the advice should be show and tell, not show, don't tell. Like, if you're a writer writing a story, you've obviously got to tell the story. There's just no other way of doing it. You listen to like good writers with good writing advice, people like Chuck Palahniuk, talking about like what he wants to get out of the story. He said he wanted it to come across as though he were being told a story by like an old drunk in a bar or something. Like, yeah, being told a story, and the tone, intonation, and how you tell the story in your prose, like, yeah, that stuff is all very important as well. And I'll come to that. And the example I'm going to be using in this demolition of the advice of show, don't tell is the brilliant thriller by Robert Harris, Fatherland. It's a speculative history piece about dealing with the idea of whether or not Hitler won the war. Excellent book, brilliantly written, and this first page, or these first two pages of chapter two, I think I'm going to read now to give you a feel for what I mean by show, don't tell, as terrible advice. So here we go. Criminal headquarters lie on the other side of Berlin, a 25-minute drive from the Havel. Telling. March needed a statement from Yost and offered to drop him back his barracks change, but Yost said no. He would sooner make his statement quickly. Telling. So once the body had been stowed aboard the ambulance dispatched to the morgue, they set off in March's little four-door Volkswagen through the rush-hour traffic. Telling. It was one of those dismal Berlin mornings when the famous Berliner luft seems not so much bracing as merely raw, the moisture stinging the face and hands like 1,000 frozen needles. That is showing. On the Potsdamer Straße, the spray from the wheels of the passing cars forced a few pedestrians close to the side of the buildings. That's telling. Um, Watching them through the rain-flecked windows, March imagined a city of blind men feeding their way to work. Watching them through the rain-flecked window. The first bit of that, like the first bit of this sentence, rain-flecked window bit, is like that's showing something. That's evoking an image. March imagined a city of blind men feeding their way to work. But then he's talking about March's imagination, which is like almost like telling what's going on inside his imagination. You don't really see the city of blind men feeding their way to work exactly. It was also normal. Later, what would strike him most? Later, that was what would strike him most. Telling. It was like having an accident. Before it, nothing out of the ordinary. Then the moment, and after it, a world that was changed forever. For there was nothing more routine than a body fished out of the Havel. It happened twice now. Derelicts and failed businessmen, reckless kids and lovelorn teenagers, accidents and suicides and murders, the desperate, the foolish, the sad. Telling. A telephone had rung in his apartment in Ansbacher Strasse shortly after 6:15. The call had not woken him. Telling. He had been lying in the semi-darkness with his eyes open, listening to the rain. Telling. For the past few months, he'd slept badly. Telling. March, we got a report of the body in the Havel. It was Kraus, Krippel's night duty officer. Go and take a look. There's a good fellow. Telling. March said he was not interested. Telling. Your interest or lack of it is beside the point. I'm not interested, said March, because I'm not on duty. I was not on duty last week and the week before, and the week before that, he might have added. Telling. This is my day off. Look at your list. I've been a pause at the other end, then Kraus had come back online, grudgingly apologetic. Telling. You're in luck, March. I was looking at last week's rota. You can go back to sleep. Or, he sniggered, or whatever else it was you were doing. Telling. A gust of wind slashed rain against the window pane, rattling the pane. Sorry, a gust of wind has slashed rain against the window, rattling the pane. That's showing. So it ends on a bit of imagery at the end, showing. What you need to do, really, I think, is intersperse imagery throughout your work. And include evocative statements, and try and put your reader in the action and all that. I do get the general thrust of the advice, but you think that if advice was going to be advice about writing, it would at least be well written advice, don't you think? But show, don't tell. Like, no, that's not. It's not a don't tell. It's show and tell. You must be showing and telling. If you're really just telling a story, which, I mean, I've come across very few, even bad writers that do this. you know, they like no one says, and then he did this, and then he did that, and then he went to the shops, and then he did this, and then he did that. Like that's like very few people do that. But and then there's a different sort of writer who will go like far more towards the end of the showing spectrum and be showing far too much and like needs to describe every itsy little bit of detail of like her mouth coiled, smiling in the corners of her mouth, and smile like sunbeams, all that crap. But and there's also, when it comes to telling, there's a brilliant and artful way that it can be done. Like, not like, what is wrong with telling? There's nothing wrong with telling stories necessarily. If it's done well, it can be brilliant. But it's like, take these telling sentences. It happened twice a month. Derelicts and failed businessmen, reckless kids and lovelorn teenagers, accidents and suicides and murders, the desperate, the foolish, the sad. That's a very good sentence. I thought it was very well put together. It's got some a nice kind of pacing to it. It's got a nice rhythm to it, I think. And like, a lot of the sentences are like this, like short sentences mixed in with larger, longer ones to break up the rhythm of it and the structure. And like very often, like it's got what it has in Fatherland. In this, is it's got the balance of showing and telling right. So if you really push people on this advice of show, don't tell, it is again like the sort of thing that gets passed around writers' workshop groups, the sort of thing where someone reads out their poem or their short story or whatever, and some other neophyte, inexperienced, unpublished writer clucks up and says, like, well, I didn't really get a lot of imagery from that. Or I think you're more showing rather, you're telling too much rather than showing. Like, well, frankly, who are you to be giving advice as someone who isn't a successful writer yourself? But I mean, no, yeah, it's bad advice. It's just bad advice. It's poorly written advice. It's poorly conceived advice. Don't follow it. The advice should be show and tell in balance.